Well, welcome. This is the Kevin Cookingham for America podcast for Monday, June 13th, where we have a healthy dose of biblical truths, traditional values, politics, and current events. I want to let you know it's been a while since I've been here. In fact, we shot one podcast and then I got influenza and I've been coughing like crazy for the last 3 weeks, but I'm glad to be back and get back in the saddle for the podcast. And I want to thank you for watching the first one that I did. We had almost 600 views on Facebook alone, actually almost 700 views on Facebook alone. And I haven't even checked on YouTube and any of the other platforms, but thank you for being involved. And I hope you can share this and get involved and I hope you'll enjoy what I'm talking about today, which is actually the economy. And it's something that I love to talk about because I just find the economy interesting. And one thing that I've noticed about people these days is everybody seems to have the same opinion that something big is going on here with our economy. We have a wonderful neighborhood here where we live, and a lot of times we'll be out front just kind of talking and hanging out. And it was interesting a while back when we had a bunch of our neighbors around. We were just out there talking to everybody, and everybody said the same thing. They're extremely concerned about what's going on in this country politically and the ramifications on our own financial well-being. So it's interesting. I was looking up some quotes from some of the brightest people in our country the other day, and I noticed that Ray Dalio, who's a billionaire, had come out saying that there is going to be a catastrophic economic event that's coming. Now, this is a guy that's a billionaire, and he's certainly somebody that you should listen to, and I should listen to over some sort of political hack, right? Somebody that wants to make things look better than what they are normally looking. And then there was Elon Musk, who said just recently, I have a super bad feeling about the economy. And you know, Elon Musk is brilliant. Then there's Jack Dorsey with Twitter, who issued a dire warning about inflation. And he believes we're actually going to hit hyperinflation. And he said, this is going to change everything. That's pretty impactful. And then one quote that I've seen recently with Jamie Dimon, of course, that I've seen quoted numerous times on the news. He is the CEO of JP Morgan. And he said he believes an economic earthquake is coming. Now, here are four highly respected, wealthy people, brilliant people that know finances inside and out, and they believe there's going to be some huge things going on in our society financially that's going to hit our pocketbooks and hit everything that we do in our purchasing power, in our daily lives. So I want to give you a few facts. A study just came out that said Americans are now $22 billion behind on paying utility bills. $22 billion behind on paying their utility bills. Credit card debt is up 30% over a year ago. When all this stimulus money was just being flooding into society, experts warned the politicians this is going to cause inflation. It's going to cause bad inflation. And they just poured out money. I was in a meeting and one of the people in this meeting worked with the IRS, and she says, we are giving out tens of thousands of dollars to individuals all over this country. And she said she personally had overseen the distribution of thousands of checks that were 10 to 15,000 per family that were given out. Consumer confidence, we've been keeping track of consumer confidence for 85 years in this country. And in the entire 85 years, the consumer confidence level is at the lowest point it's ever been in all 85 years of where they've kept track. Target and big box stores are giving warnings now in regards to profits. And I kind of want to say something about that because I was listening to one guy speak maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he was predicting that there would be very difficult economic times coming up in the near future. And he said, well, they said, well, like what? Hyperinflation, stagflation? He said, well, no, deflation, inflation, and stagflation all at the same time. So what I see happening right now, and I'm no financial advisor, I'm not giving you financial advice, but what I see happening right now is we see things that maybe aren't a necessity to live, like maybe makeup or different types of clothes that you might wear or whatever. People are pulling back on buying those things, maybe trips, whatever it may be. And yet things that we need, food and energy, we need that every day. I mean, driving or cooling your house down or whatever it may be, those are the things that are inflating greatly. And so, and then stagflation, we're starting to see layoffs now. Now, before, everybody was looking for workers, and they're still looking for workers in this country. But I'm starting to see companies now say they're cutting back and they're tightening up because the sales aren't there. And by the way, it was only about a month or two ago where we were seeing car dealerships tack on tens of thousands of dollars on the base price of their cars. And they were doing this at a time where people were receiving all this money and it was going out. But now I believe we'll see a time where cars aren't going to sell like we thought they were selling. I'm going to talk about real estate here in a second as well. 65% of Americans are saying that if they had a $1,000 bill that was unexpected, they couldn't pay it. Think about that. 6 out of every 10, 65% are saying they couldn't do that. And so if these are people that are may have an extra expense and they're saying we wouldn't know what to do with just $1,000 expense that is out of the ordinary. Yahoo Finance said that our savings rate is at the lowest rate since 2008, and that it's at now as a low 4.4%. CNBC said that our savings from just a year ago are down 15%. I don't know if you noticed the stock market today, but it was down almost 900 points today. And it was down, about 800 points, Matt? Matt's in here with me. I think it was down about 800 points on Friday. And believe me, the people I'm listening to that know what they're talking about, they don't think we're anywhere near a bottom yet. And it was interesting. I've been taught all my life, diversify. So I'm diversified in a number of different asset areas, and every asset was down today. Everything was way down today. It didn't matter if it's precious metals, didn't matter if it's crypto, didn't matter if it was stock, didn't matter. Everything was down today tremendously. So looked at another study dealing with homes, and I personally believe, and by the way, I'm a real estate agent, but I don't talk to any of my friends about buying right now. Selling, yes, not buying, because I believe there's going to be a huge drop in our real estate because people just can't afford these new interest rates. 73% in a recent study of home lookers said they were pulling out of the market looking for homes because they've been priced out of home buying because of the higher interest rates. 73%. Think what that will do in the next few months in regards to real estate. My son, who just went to Florida, said he really liked Florida. And so just out of curiosity, I went to Zillow and started looking up homes in Florida. And probably 3, maybe 4 out of every 5 homes, there was a price reduction now in Florida. And of course, we know that real estate it all depends on what's happened locally. But I believe that will start moving around. Just in Fresno area where I live, I noticed just recently, builders are starting to offer incentives again. And so, $15,000 of incentives now, where before you couldn't even get into a home. And if you made an offer on a home, you might have to make it 30, 40, 50,000 above the asking price just to get the offer accepted. But now builders are starting to say, hey, we'll give you $15,000, $20,000 of incentives. They're advertising more. I'm starting to notice more real estate here in town where there also is a reduction in price. Official inflation right now, 8.6%, but that's coming from the government. If you look at shadow stats and you look at other people that are business people, they're going to tell you it's not 8.6%. It's somewhere between 15 and 20%. And Bloomberg stated that the average American this year in 2022 will spend $5,200 more just this year, just because of inflation. One thing, inflation. So you can think of, do you have an extra $433 a month to spend just for the extra costs of gas and food and goods and so forth? That's a lot of money for a lot of people. Well, now we're over $30 trillion in debt. We are absolutely controlled by the debt in this country. And by the way, as interest rates rise, What do you think that's going to do to our national debt? Our national debt went from 10 trillion to 20 trillion under Obama. Then it went from 20 trillion to about 28 trillion under Trump. And we're just like throwing trillions out right now across this country, going more and more debt. That's not okay, but it's even worse when interest rates are going up, because it means that it's going to explode our debt, our national debt, out of control. So the rise in interest rates are going to have a major impact on that. And a lot of times when we talk about $1 trillion, we don't talk about what that means. And so I looked it up actually on the internet, and it gave an example that I read, and it said that if you counted to 1 trillion and you counted one number every second, 1, 2, 3, so forth, like that, then if you did that, it would take 32,000 years to count to 1 trillion. And we're over $30 trillion in debt, and they're still spending money like crazy. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." We've got to get out of debt, people. And I'm not talking about just on a national level. We need to be out of debt. And I'm telling you, it's totally freeing to have things paid for. And that is something that needs to be a goal of everyone. I believe we don't help people that need to be helped because we're so far in debt. We're paying so many bills. We can't do the things we need to do to help other people. So I want to tell you a story. I want to finish up this part on the economy with the story that happened a number of years ago. It was quite a few years ago. Our kids were young at the time, and they're now adults. But we were living in a place called Woodward Park, and we were in a nice house there, and thought everything was going great. And we had a little kiddie pool out in the back that we were playing around in, and the electricity went off. And I didn't know it at the time, but the electricity had gone off the grid. There'd been an issue with the electrical grids in 7 states. It had shut off. And so we're just having a good time. I didn't think much of it. And we're playing around in this kiddie pool, trying to stay cool. Because, of course, the summertime here in the valley, it could be 107, 108 degrees. And it was very hot that day. And after a while, it got to be about 5 o'clock, and I said to my wife, I'm going to go grab the kids something to eat. And so I drove right around the corner to Save Mart, and it was totally closed because there was no electricity, and there was no backup by a generator. So all the doors were closed, and you can imagine if they would have opened and people would have panicked, it could have been chaos, absolute chaos. So they shut the doors. Everything was closed. So I thought, no big deal. I just went over to Vaughn's. And it's just across, half a mile, quarter mile from there. So I went over to Vaughn's. Same thing. Doors shut. Everybody gone. Parking lots cleared out. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And so I kind of looked around for another store to be open. There were none. And finally, I found a place about 2 miles away that was a gas station, but it's one of those gas stations that have ice and drinks and different types of groceries and so forth. And I went inside, and the guy had this look of terror on his face. He just looked at me like, oh, my word, do you have any idea what I've been through? And I looked around. All the ice was gone. All the drinks were gone. All the water was gone. All the food was gone, except there was like one little jar of peanut butter that was on the shelf. And I just thought, wow, people have panicked now, and they have gone crazy over this place. And it was the only place that was open. And I'll never forget that, because I thought, from that point on, I thought, what if our electricity was off for 2 days, 3 days? How about a week? What if there was a cyber attack and the banks couldn't give you cash for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, a week? What if you couldn't use your Visa card? What would you do? Do you have some cash sitting around? What's going on? Do you have food that you could eat if it wasn't refrigerated? What if your refrigerator shut off and your freezer shut off and the food started thawing out? What would you do? Would you be able to cook it? Do you have a way to cook it? Those are all things that kind of went through my mind. I thought, as a father, one of my key roles is taking care of my family. So am I prepared should this ever happen again? So I want to just give you a couple things that we need to be thinking about during this time, because I believe things are going to get a lot worse. That's just what I believe. And I'm not trying to be Mr. Naysayer here or Mr. Negative. I believe things are going to get a lot worse. People feel it. The experts feel it. The statistics show it. And no matter what the administration says, things are going to get worse, I believe. So one is quit buying stuff you don't need. Okay, I can't say it any more clear than that. If you don't need it, don't buy it. Put the money in a savings account and say, well, I was going to spend it, but guess what? I'm putting this away. And yes, you will lose some value because of inflation. But it's better to have it put away and lose a little value in inflation than to just spend it on something you don't need. 2, sell things that you don't need. If you've got something at your house and you're not using it and it's been sitting there, you can't believe the amount of stuff that gets accumulated over years in households that you never use. And then people pay to store it someplace, and they're paying $175, $200 a month to store things, and it's not even worth that. You can't even sell those items for that. And so get rid of that stuff. Sell it. Get out of debt. Any way you can think possible, get out of debt, especially the debt that is high interest debt. And if you have a credit card, most likely you're being charged in the 18 to 20 to 23% interest rate range. It's terrible. So get out of debt. Find a side gig. All my life, no matter what I've done, I've found side gigs. So I'd be working full time, but I'd either start a nursery meaning for trees, or I'd start a business of some other type on the side. I have a friend that was a coach in the school district that I worked with, and they came to him and said, you know what, we're going to replace you. And so he became a realtor, and he has done extremely well selling real estate, putting in a lot less hours than he was as a coach, and he's just killing it in real estate. So find a side gig. Buy some extra essentials that you use regularly. You don't want to be buying things that are going to expire or things you don't use, but if it's stuff you're going to rotate on a regular basis, and you know what, I look at dates now. When I buy something, I'll look at the date on it and I'll go, hey, this is good till 2025. This canned chicken's good till 2025, or this granola is good for 2 years, or this oil is good for 18 months, or whatever it may be. I now look at dates, and I think that's kind of an important thing that we can, so we can rotate it through, and it's not something that we have to throw away that way. And then know that there's going to be more lawlessness as more and more people are out of work, as more and more people can't afford the increase in food, the increase in energy, the increase in utility bills. There's going to be more lawlessness. And it doesn't help that we have a governor who let out 70,000 criminals onto the streets because of COVID. And apparently masks didn't work in the prisons, but they were mandated outside the prisons because supposedly they work outside the prisons but not in. So he lets out 70,000 convicts, and they're breaking into places all over the place. So in the last month, I've had 4 friends. Kelly and I have had 4 friends that have had their houses ransacked and their valuables gone through. And these people are getting smart. They know what to do. Our neighbor was broken into just recently, and they have dogs, so they had a doggy door. So guess what? The people knew that they didn't have a motion detector in their bedroom because they can't. When they're gone, the dogs go in and out. Well, that would set off an alarm, so you can't have a motion detector in their bedroom. They knew, too, if you opened the door, the alarm would go off. So they broke the door. It was a glass door. They didn't open the door. They walked through, and the rest of the house was alarmed, so they knew not to go outside the bedroom, and they stole $30,000 worth of jewelry. And so I'm just telling you, there's going to be more lawlessness. Gerald Celente said one time, a famous quote of Gerald Celente, he said, when people have nothing left to lose and they've lost everything, they lose it. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as we see how this breaks down in society. All right, well, I'm going to leave you with something positive because I don't want you to be going to bed tonight going, oh my goodness, I'm going to be awake all night long thinking about this, that we're going to be destroyed or whatever. And I want you to know I haven't lost any sleep over this at all. I do believe that we're headed for some very difficult times, but you know what, as a Christian, I believe God gives us some common sense on how to prepare for different things. We all need to evaluate where we're at and what we think might be the best thing to do. But the bottom line is this, the most important thing is found in Philippians 4, 6, and 7. It says this, do not be anxious about anything, not a thing. Don't be anxious. Doesn't matter whether it's the economy, doesn't matter what's going on. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Put it before God, period. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, other translations say, which passes all understanding, which transcends all. In other words, you can't even imagine this. The peace will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That's awesome. And so prepare, get out of debt, don't be a slave to debt, turn your eyes on Christ, petition God, and the peace of God that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Well, that ends the second Kevin Cookingham for America podcast. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you'll share this podcast with your friends, and I want you to have an amazing week. God bless you. Thanks so much for listening.